Shri Guruve Namaha. So we are continuing with Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur's foreword to Sri Brahma-samhita. The language is very sophisticated, a little difficult to catch, but once you can get past that to some degree, it's very, very wonderful, very wonderful. So I'm going to go pick up from where we left off a few weeks ago. I think this is where we left off. I think we finished this paragraph. Yeah, we finished the first two paragraphs, so we're here on the third paragraph. Okay, Jai Shri Gurudev. The first hymn, so this is referring to the famous first verse of Brahma-samhita. The first hymn, which is establishing Krishna as the God of all gods. The first hymn will establish the supremacy of the absolute truth if his substratum is not shot by the bullets of limited time, ignorance, and uncomfortable feeling, as well as by recognizing the same as an effect, instead of accepting him as the prime cause. Now this word substratum, let me look that up, unless someone can tell me what that means clearly.
It's the basis, I think. The basis. Something like basis, yeah.
Let me look up
It's literally layers underneath. So that
underlying.
Would be whatever the foundation would be built on. It's like the foundation is there, but it won't stand if they don't have the proper stuff in place already.
Mm-hmm. So referring to like faith in theism, the faith in God and the existence of God, something like that is what's being referred to, like that basis for his existence, something like along those lines, is not shot by, I mean, it's such powerful language, is not shot by the bullets of limited time. So presumably that means not enough time to explain. Ignorance, and this is a big problem. Ignorance, persons simply have limited thinking and they're not able to even begin to conceive of such a thing. Persons have prejudices, right? They don't have an open-mindedness. They have some bias. And before you can even get into a serious discussion, it'll be shot down. I mean, it's wonderful. It's actually very modern. It actually really works for a modern audience, because we all experience that. And recently, I had this interesting experience with this young man who he very very like pious, auspicious person. But he had a prejudice against the conception that God could appear in a personal feature, that God could have some personal expression, that he could have a spiritual form. Like he visited a few times and he read some of the books, and then it kind of dawned on him that we worship a personal entity. That is our ultimate ideal, to have a personal loving relationship with God, and that he had some bias against that, and he wasn't able to even consider something else. So this is a problem, limited thinking, or ignorance, as Srila Saraswati Thakur is saying here, or in a broader sense, just atheism in general, right? It's a type of ignorance. Persons aren't able to even consider the possibility. They have a limited, boxed way of seeing things. Seeing is believing, and so on, and they're not able to step out of that and consider things from an unbiased perspective. And then this is very nice, uncomfortable feeling. And I remember, as I mentioned before, I went through this previously with Shuddha Shava Prabhu, one of our dear friends, and he really appreciated that remark, because there is that feeling, there is that awkwardness, right? There are many circles in which Where if you mention like there's sometimes they'll joke and say like the G word, like if you say God, then people get uncomfortable. you know, it's awkward. Like it's not cool. You're not cool anymore. One of our godbrothers in Brazil, Sao Paulo, he's a psychologist, and he said that in the circles of psychologists that he moved in, I don't know if it's like this everywhere, but there in where he worked in Sao Paulo, like the psychologists, if they know that you have faith in a divinity, they think you're something wrong with you. You're mad. It's a type of madness. That was just like the status quo. So there is this kind of awkwardness, that this awkward feeling that comes up, uncomfortable feeling that comes up in many groups, if you bring this up, like this simplicity of faith. There's like this prevailing cynicism, isn't there, in modern society? Like this humanistic cynicism, it's taken a strong hold on modern society. And there's something awkward about someone just having pure, innocent faith in the divine, like that's something that people will make fun of, right? So I appreciate that. It's a very like sharp remark and observation, the uncomfortable feeling that comes up. If his substratum is not shot by the bullets of limited time, ignorance, and uncomfortable feeling, as well as by recognizing the same as an effect instead of accepting him as the prime cause, he will be satisfied to mark that the object of their determination is the par excellent Supreme Lord Sri Krishna, who has eternally embodied himself in his ever presence, all blissful, all pervasive, perfected knowledge, as the very fountainhead of all prime causes of unending, non-beginning time, the supplying fosterer of all entities, viz. Mundane and transcendental. The subsequent lines will go to determine the different aspects of the Absolute, who are but emanations of the supreme fountainhead Krishna, the attractive entity of all entities. Moreover, the derivative proclamation of the nomenclature will indicate the plane of uninterrupted, unending, transcendental felicity, and the nomenclature himself is the source of the two components which go by the names of efficient and material causes. The very transcendental name Krishna is known as the embodiment of all the transcendental eternal rasas, as well as the origin of all eclipsed conceptions of interrupted rasas found in the mentality of animated beings which are successfully depicted by literators and rhetoricians for our mundane speculation. Wow, my goodness, I mean, the level of articulation here is so sharp, so precise. This is wonderful. Eclipsed conceptions of interrupted rasas. And this here, Krishna is the embodiment of all the transcendental eternal rasas. And this reminds us of this phrase of Srila Rupa Goswami, describing Krishna as Akila Rasamrita Murti. This is the specialty of Krishna. And this is how our acharyas, in a scientific way, identify Krishna as supreme, right? Because the gold standard is established to be rasa. Rasa is the thing, rasa is it, that which we are all searching after, right? So therefore, whoever can provide the most rasa, whoever has the most rasa, they must be supreme. That's the criteria, right? That's the grading, reference, who has the most of that. So Krishna has the most of that. Everything, all relationships, all flavors, all sensations, all experience, they're all available with him. So this is how our gurus identify and demonstrate Krishna's as supreme. So rasa is the thing, right? So what is it that is lacking in this world? It's the plane of interrupted rasas. we can't, like, what's that song? Is it can't get no satisfaction? Is that old song, that's it. That's this world in a nutshell. We can't get rasa. We can't get no rasa here. We only experience some, interrupted rasa, some, reflections of temporary reflections of rasa. This is what we experience in this world. The verses of Brahma-samhita are a full elucidation of the origination of phenomenal and pneumenic conceptions. Does anyone say what pneumenic means? Look that up. Even Marie's looking puzzled here. I'm bringing out my dictionary.
I think it's numerable.
That's what it looks like, doesn't it? Is that
Number.
Where's my dictionary here?
Pneumenic. It looks like it comes from the word noumenon, which is a thing as it is in itself, as distinct from a thing as it is knowable by the senses
Oh
through
no.
phenomenal attributes. No? Is that not it?
Yes.
That
yes,
sounds
that's-
very complicated.
That's it?
it's like
Oh, no.
It's also discussed by the philosopher Kant. The thing in itself, as das Ding an sich, as opposed to what Kant called the phenomenon, the thing as it appears. Oh, interesting. Thing as it appears to an observer. What is the difference between phenomena and, okay, so this is the discussion here. Phenomena are the appearances which constitute our experience. Noumena are the presumed, right? Because presumed, right? That's also the point here. Things themselves which constitute reality. Okay, very interesting. Very interesting.
At the top of the page, there was a definition that looked good too.
Where?
All the way at the top. There.
Here.
In
And
philosophy, an object or event exists independently of human sense or perception.
Okay, interesting. Wow, this is actually so profound. So profound. Because this is actually, I'm finding this whole conception very helpful, when it comes to explaining the nature of Krishna, right? Not God as we perceive him, but as he is. Like this is the specialty of the Krishna conception. We were discussing this point earlier today with Gaurachandra, one of our brothers here, that, and this is why Krishna consciousness can be so hard for the average person to grasp, because there's no reference point to our worldly experience, right? Normally religion is a little more accessible to people because, they can make some reference point to their experience in this world, or there's something that is tangibly beneficial to them in the here and now, right? But Krishna consciousness is describing God, what would you say, numenically? Like as he is, like independent of how we want to see him or need to see him or whatever it may be, the thing in itself. So interesting. Let's go back and see the context in which Srila Saraswati Thakur is using these terms. Are a full elucidation of the origination of phenomenal and pneumenic conceptions. The hymns of the incarnated prime potency has dealt fully with the monotheistic speculations of different schools, which are busy to give an outer cover of an esoteric concoction without any reference to the true eternal aspect of transcendental, non-transformable, an imperishable manifestation of the immanent. The hymns have also dealt with different partial aspects of the personality of the Absolute, who is quite isolated from the conception of the enjoyers of this phenomenal world. Wow, this is so wonderful. This is so wonderful. And this is something that we were discussing a few weeks ago, that, like when we're coming to the Vedic arena, generally we're being presented with the characters, right? There's Brahma, there's Shiva, there's Vishnu, there's Krishna, there's Durga, there's Parvati, right? And so on. And there are also different planes of existence that are described, but how does everything fit together? There's different conceptions of the absolute Brahman, Paramatma, Bhagavan, but what's the story, right? We're introduced to the characters, but what's the story? What's the narrative? Generally what persons are dealing with when it comes to religion, as it's saying here, different partial aspects of the personality of the Absolute. But what is the whole picture, right? And then Bhaktivinoda Thakur gives that simple analogy of climbing a mountain, right? That at every angle, at every point on the mountain, at every vantage point, you have a particular view, which has its valid existence, right? But it's a partial view, and it's only at the top that you get that 360 perspective. So that's what's being presented in Brahma-samhita. And then this phrase is also very powerful. The Absolute, who is quite isolated from the conception of the enjoyers of this phenomenal world. Because normally we're seeing things through the lens of our own enjoyment, right? But going back to this idea of, pneumenic, or noumenon, or whatever the word, noumenon, okay. Expanding our vocabulary here. Who is he, on his own as he is, without our reference point, independent of our lower reference points, that's what we're being given in this text. That's what Krishna consciousness is giving us. We're being introduced to his world and his life, not his world through the lens of our tiny little finite experience. A very close attention and comparative study of all prevailing thoughts and conceptions will relieve and enlighten all. Be he a materialist, a downright atheist, an agnostic, a skeptic, a naturalist, a pantheist, or panentheist, busy with their knowledge of 3 dimensions, only by their speculative exertions. Wonderful, huh? This booklet is only the 5th chapter of the hymns of Brahma, which were recorded in 100 chapters. The Supreme Lord Sri Chaitanya picked up this chapter from the temple of Adi Keshava at Tiruvattar, a village lying under the government of Travancore, for the assurance of all God-loving and especially Krishna-loving people in this conditioned jurisdiction. This booklet can easily be compared with another book which passes by the name of Srimad Bhagavatam. Though it has got a reference in the pantheon of Puranas, the Bhagavatam corroborates the same idea of this Pancharatra. The devotees should consider that these 2 books tend to the identical Krishna, so Srimad Bhagavatam and Brahma-samhita. They're both, putting Krishna in the center, recognizing him as the fountainhead of all transcendental and mundane entities, and has a manifestive exhibition of the plenary variegatedness. Aspersions of calumniation. Okay, here's another word for a vocabulary book. Does anyone know that word, calumniation? Anjayade is with us, and Chintamani is with us. Dhanyavad. So calumniation, any offers? We have to look this one up. Calumniated.
To utter maliciously, oh, you have it, false statements.
The utter maliciously false statements, charges, or imputations about. Okay. Aspersions of calumniation are restricted in the limited world, whereas transcendence cannot admit such angularities, being an angle of 180 degrees or void of any angular discrepancies. Okay, does anyone want to try and explain that sentence? Aspersions of calumniation are restricted in the limited world, whereas transcendence cannot admit such angularities, being an angle of 180 degrees. Or, I mean, it's speaking about awkwardness, right? Awkwardness, so that transcendental plane is free of such awkwardness, something like that. Okay, well, coming to the end here. The publisher is carried away to the realm of gratitude when his stores of publication are scrutinized. Thakur Bhaktivinoda has given an elucidatory purport of the conception of the most sublime fountainhead of all entities in Bengali. And one of his devout followers has rendered that into English for propagatory purpose. The purports and translations are traced to the backgrounds of the writings of Srila Jiva Goswami, a contemporary follower of the Supreme Lord Sri Krishna Chaitanya. The emotional aspirations will find fair play in perusing the text of this brochure by one and all who have any interest in pure theistic achievements. That's a very nice phrase, pure theistic achievements. Very nice. Because normally we use that word achievement for like things, you know, that are more tangible in an objective, you know, material sense, you know. But there's also achievement to be had in the subtle sphere, in the realm of theism. You know? Like Srila Sridhar Maharaj, he comments how, like, just as within this world there are like great, you know, so-called great explorers who have discovered, you know, gone out courageously and discovered so many things, you know. So there are also explorers in the plane of consciousness. Who are discovering, you know, uncovering different dimensions of a subtle, more subtle reality. So that is a very rare and special thing for one to realize the value of such achievements, right? Because they're existing on a subtle plane. And this is a very rare and special thing to have. The materialistic inspection often goes on to say that the provincial conception of theism has made the depicting of transcendental unity into diverse faiths quite opposed to the ethical consideration of the limited region. But we differ from such erroneous considerations when we get a perspective view of the manifested transcendentality, eliminating all historicities and allegorical enterprises. This reminds me of one comment, also Saraswati Thakur, speaking about the nature of Krishna Lila, you know, and he says it is not, no, it's not history. It's not, you know, metaphor, allegory, as he's saying here. You know, symbolism, you know, some persons have this idea, right, that all these things are just symbols, you know, for abstract concepts, right? But he expresses in this place that, you know, it's an eternally flowing current of reality. You know, Krishna Lila, you know, will, you know, for the sake of, I had an interesting conversation earlier today with our godbrother Gaur Chandrapu, and we were saying how, you know, when you look, it's just fascinating, you know, when you look at how, like, much of our scripture has come to us, there isn't exactly a beginning, middle, and ends. You know, like if you look at like Mahabharata, for example, it's a whole labyrinth, you know, and it's like story within story within story within story. You just, and like our finite brains linear thinking brains don't like that. You know, it's like awkward, you know. If you look at Srimad Bhagavatam, you know, there's 4 different sittings of Srimad Bhagavatam. You know, Narada to Vyas, then Vyas to Shukadev, Shukadev to the assembly of Parikshit Maharaj, and then Sutta Goswami to another assembly of sages, and then Vyasa Devi's putting it down in writing, right? You know, and then Brihad Bhagavatamrita, right? Parikshit Maharaj, just before he's about to lose his life, his mother comes up to him, oh my dear son, I missed the whole narration of Bhagavatam. Can you tell me the gist of it? And then he tells his mother, like on the brink of death, this story of Gopakumar and Narada's journey and Brihad Bhagavatamrita. And then there's this another sage, Jaimini Rishi, who happens to be in the bushes nearby, and he hears it, and then he passes it on. Like there's so many, you know, like transcendental literatures that come in this very like kind of zigzag way, you know. And how was that connected? No, I lost my train of thought, you know. But yeah, just our brains, like we have very limited ways of thinking. You know, another very interesting thing are, you know, we have these 4 volumes that were published with the talks of Srila Sridhar Maharaj. The series is called Sermons of the Guardian of Devotion, right? So there's volume 1, volume 2, volume 3, volume 4. But what's very interesting is our Gurudev, Srila Govinda Maharaj, he requested that volume 4 be printed before volume 3. Like, why? I don't know. I have no idea. It's a different world. It's a totally different world. You know? Srimad Bhagavatam is talked about in earlier scriptures. You know, it's like these sages, it's like they're dipping out into different dimensions, right? And it's like time and space are not factors anymore, you know. So like this, like when it comes to the nature of Krishna Lila, like, you know, for the sake of speaking and according to like socially accepted conventions, then 5,000 years ago, you know, in UP, India, you know, that's not really how it is. It's going, it's moving now, it's flowing now, it's live streaming now. You know, that's what's actually going on. And persons who are evolved enough, they're dipping into that, you know, according to their will, right? And there's an analogy that Bhaktivinoda Thakur, I believe, gives, like if you throw a flower into a river stream, then that flower will gradually move away from you, right? But if you can move at the speed of that river, the flower will remain beside you, right? So it is like that, you know, those persons with advanced devotional consciousness, you know, they're not limited by these barriers of time and space, and they can access these streaming planes of reality. All our enjoying mood should have a different direction when we take into account the transcendental entity who has obsessed all frailties and limitations of nature. Obsessed. Does that word have a different meaning, another meaning that I don't know about? Does anyone understand that? All our enjoying mood should have a different direction when we take into account the transcendent who has obsessed all frailties and limiting. Okay, I'm gonna have to look at this word. Obsessed. Okay. I want a different obsessed definition. To haunt, possess. I don't know. I'm not sure about that. But this, at least this part I can appreciate very much. This is very nice. You know, all our enjoying mood should have a different direction when we take into account the transcendental entity. Our enjoyment gets spoiled, actually, you know, once we understand, you know. And many devotees, they've expressed to me, like, you know, how like once they come to Krishna consciousness, like their enjoyment in the world has just been spoiled forever. And they just can't get the same pleasure that they did when they go back to those things, you know. And it can be a position of frustration, because at the same time, you know, you're not getting, right, the juice out of Krishna Nam, right? We're not at that stage yet where we're relishing the nectar of the pure name, right? And you're also not getting the nectar on the mundane side either. So it's a very, very funny, very curious place to be, you know. And that's, you know, that's more or less where we are. And we're in that awkward middle stage, you know, the transition stage. You know? So we solicit a happier mood of the scrutinizers to pay special attention to the importance of manifestive transcendence in Krishna. And I have to say, if I can one day meet someone who can like explain like every sentence in this forward, I would be very happy. Very intriguing, many of these expressions. It was found necessary to publish this small book for the use of English knowing people who are interested in the acme of transcendental truths in their manifestive phases. Very nice. Because there are many transcendental truths, right? But what is being presented here is the acme of that. And as was mentioned earlier, you know, not just, you know, in a partial sense, but from the perspective of the whole, in that sense. The theme delineated in the text of this book is quite different from the ordinary heaps of poetical mundane literature, as they are confined to our limited aspiration of senses. The book was found in the South some 4 centuries ago, and it is again brought into light in the very same country after a long time, just like the worshipping of the goddess Ganges by the offering of her own water. Very nice expression. He's saying that like this book has like come, you know, from India, right? And he's offering it back to the people of India, something like that. And this is a kind of a well-known expression. Our Gurudev, I heard our Gurudev Srila Govind Maharaj, Ganga Jale, Ganga Puja. It's a very curious thing that you worship the mother Ganges with Ganges water. You worship Ganga Devi with Ganga water. So, you know, everything is like that actually, right? We are worshiping the Lord with his ingredients, right? We're worshiping Guru with everything that he's given us. You know? We don't have anything else. You know? No. We don't have, there's nothing else. There's nothing outside of that, right? No. Shri Siddhanta Saraswati, Shri Gaudiya Math, Calcutta, 1st of August, 1932. Wow, it's so wonderful. Even if, you know, we can't understand every sentence, you feel the potency coming through. Sure can. Really beautiful. Anyone want to add any thoughts on what we've just read? Anything come to mind? Oh, maybe I'll close this screen share. Okay. Well, Subhasini, so you did you say you went through the first 5 verses? Is that what you said? So you already went through verse Ishvara Parama Krishna.
The first 2, only 2 verses in the beginning. And then last week we just, went to 29, verse 29, but we had to go through from 3, verse 3. Yeah. Well, we can go through from first verse if you desire from 1.
Yeah, I was hoping we'd go over it again with you, like we were just doing it, to fill in space. But if we get, that would be my hope.
Yeah, we can go through from the beginning.
Okay, sure. I'll be happy to, because I want to be part of the journey too. So okay, cool. All right. So so we're gonna go to verse 1, and should we show it on the screen as well, or does everyone have a book in front of them? Or I don't think I've actually prepared. Let me see if I have it here quickly. Oh, I do have it here.
But I can put the link in the chat. Like
I've got it here. I've got it here. So I'll do a screen share again. Okay, so we've been through the introductory section. Let's see. Here's our Gurudev, beautiful Gurudev, Bhakti Sundar Govindadev Goswami Maharaj, Param Gurudev, Bhakti Lakshak Sridhar Dev Goswami Maharaj, Bhagavan Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Thakur, our Sri Navadip Mat, resplendently standing. Shri Shri Guru Ranga Gandharva Govinda Sundar Ju. Shri Krishna. It's like Kapanya Mat. Yeah, birthplace of Srila Sridhar Maharaj, Srila Bhakti Thakur. Okay. Okay, so here we are. All glory to Shri Shri Guru and Gauranga, Shri Shri Brahma-samhita, quintessence of reality, the beautiful. Okay, so verse 1, and this is a verse which is well known to many of you, many of us. And our Gurudev, he liked this verse very much. We heard him quote this many times. Ishvara Parama, so we can maybe chant together. Listen. Ishvara Parama Krishna Sachidananda Vigraha Anadir Govinda Sarvadharana Karana. So very, very clear, like if somebody's asking you, like, so what are you guys about? This pretty much sums it up. Yes, of course, Didi. Here you are. Krishna is the supreme personality of Godhead. That's essentially what's being established here. And in the text we were just reading from Saraswati Thakur, he was drawing this comparison with Srimad Bhagavatam, right? And similarly, the very first verse of Srimad Bhagavatam, straight up first verse, making it very clear, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, and then Janmad Yasya Yataha, right? Making it very clear, Krishna is supreme, he is the origin of all. So right from the beginning, that's being made extremely clear. Illumination, translation, the Supreme Lord, so Ishvara, Parama is supreme. Actually, the ISKCON edition, one very nice thing about it is that it has a word for word That's also nice to have in front of us to think about that. So Ishvara, Lord, Padma, Supreme, Krishna, Satchid Ananda Vigraha. So this phrase, right, we hear. And this is the Sanskrit sandhi. Jaidev can probably explain better about that. But when you run certain words together, then there's some change in the ending and beginning letters. So this is Sat, Chit, and Ananda when it's broken up. This is the nature of the soul, and that is supremely and extremely expressed in the divine form of Shri Krishna. Sat, embodiment of truth, and Vigraha, embodiments of truth, Sat, Chit, consciousness, and Ananda, joy. Anadir, Adir. Anadir means he has no beginning, right? Adir means beginning or origin. Anadir means with no origin, with no beginning. Govinda, this is also his name. Govinda, Krishna. And that is also significant, right? Govinda, one meaning of the word Govinda is, satisfy the senses, fulfill go, right? Means cows. That's also very beautiful and charming. And we're also being introduced to this charming conception of the absolute, all attractive Krishna, right? Who is full of attraction, akarshan, who is supremely, like straight up, we're being introduced, this very beautiful, charming, attractive manifestation of the absolute, not who is, fearful, who's intimidating, who's awe-inspiring, who inspires reverence and so on, but he's just beautiful and charming. Govinda, who tends to the cows. Govinda, who fulfills the senses. The senses are not to be denied, but the senses are to be utilized, engaged in their true object, their true purpose. And sarva karana karanam, karana, cause, sarva, all, cause of all causes. So he is everything, and he is beautiful, and he is our Lord. Purport: with his personal, eternal name, eternal form, eternal qualities, and eternal pastimes, Krishna alone shines resplendent above all other entities as the supreme. So this is actually like such a privilege, right? Because there are many conceptions of God, many ways in which he may be known. But what is like the most intimate, what is the eternal, the absolute? It's like for example, we may know, let's say we know someone at school, or we know someone in our workplace in a particular capacity. We know them in some particular way, but that's a very limited way of knowing them, right? But what is their true nature? Again, going back to this idea of noumena, what was it? Noumena and phenomena. It was very interesting. So this is what we are being given here. His personal, eternal name, eternal form, eternal qualities, and eternal pastime. Why can't he have that? Because some people, they get stuck on this point, why, like how can the divine, the absolute, be limited by a form? But why not? Why can he not have that? Yes, he's known in so many other ways, but what is his most favorite? What is most dear? What is most close? Krishna alone shines resplendent above all other entities as the supreme. The name Krishna is his eternal name that proclaims him to be the supreme existence by his characteristic of attracting the love of all beings. his form of concentrated truth. There's this explanation, I believe, of Jiva Goswami's. He uses this phrase, Bhajaniya Sarva Sat Guna Vishishta, that, you know, by his wonderful qualities, you know, Krishna naturally, irresistibly attracts persons to worship him, right? This is the plane of jnana shunya bhakti, knowledge-free devotion, you know, which in its highest connotation refers to those who don't have the awareness that this is God, you know. That's actually kind of like a load, like to know that this is God. That's like kind of an obstruction in the relationship, you know, to know that this is God. You know, then there's this sense, why? Because then the sense of obligation comes up, right? Oh, this is God. You know, then I'm supposed to bow to him and I'm supposed to love him. And that spoils the natural flow of love. So this is what is so special and unique about Krishna, that he has this characteristic of just naturally attracting people. And they want to love him because he's just attractive and beautiful and wonderful and loving. They want to serve him. They want to die for him, you know, because he's just so charming. His form of concentrated truth, sat, consciousness, chit, and joy, ananda, of two-armed human-like feature, and charming heavenly dark blue, Shama Sundar hue, holding the flute, Muralidhar, is his personal, eternal character. Does anyone else want to read a little bit? I don't want to over-dominate.
I can read if you want.
Yeah, please. We love.
I like how when you said the flute, then the conch started blowing.
Oh, you can hear that, huh?
Right as you were saying it, I heard. That's when I heard it.
Yeah, the artie's going on. Yeah.
Hare Krishna. By the power of his own inconceivable potency, despite his almighty, majestic nature, in his charming medium-sized form, he attracts all that be. In that eternal form, his nature as the autocrat, possessing miraculous transcendental qualities, senses, etc., is unique with all-embracing harmony. Truth, immortal consciousness, and divine ecstasy have their full glory in him, with absolute concentrated intensity.
That reminds me of that phrase. It's so nice. I'm gonna have to remember that in that introduction of Saraswati Thakur, interrupted rasa. You know, and there's also this there's this really nice line. It's in one of the purports coming up where Bhaktivinoda Thakur refers to the Brahman, the Brahmajyoti plane, as the unconcentrated plane of Sat Chit Ananda, something like that. Like it's unconcentrated, it's undistilled, but in Krishna it's absolute concentrated intensity.
I like how Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur calls it lax, the lax presentation or something like that, he says in his translation, or whoever wrote it, right? Like it's lazy, it's the lazy, hazy expression of such an Paramatman is the omnipresent super soul. The almighty God or Ishvara, Vishnu, the preserver, is but a portion of his intrinsic self, manifest within the mundane world. Therefore, Krishna is the one and only supreme Godhead, or Parameshvara, Ishvara Parama Krishna. Although his infinite transcendental senses and qualities are all clearly distinct from one another, by his inconceivable potency, they are perfectly situated, eternally appearing in the one absolutely charming, unrivaled, transcendental form. That divine form is the self of Krishna, and the self of Krishna is that divine form.
Very nice. This is a very profound point, because in this world, there's this disparity, right, between substance and form. But that is not the case there. No, that is not the case there. And I'm sure I've told this story many times, but there was this occasion when there was a book that was going to be published, being discussed in front of Srila Sridhar Maharaj, and somebody, and someone was saying, oh, we don't need to worry about the cover. It's only the substance that matters. You know, they're saying this in front of Srila Sridhar Maharaj, you know, proudly. Because normally Sridhar Maharaj is emphasizing, right, substance over. I'm a form breaker, not a form maker, right? But Srila Sridhar Maharaj, he said, you know, actually we are aspiring for the Vrindavan standard. And there, substance and form are one. So here, there's this disparity between these two things, but that issue is not found there. So that divine form is the self of Krishna, the self of Krishna is that divine form. It is something very difficult, actually, for us to conceive. You know? There's this disjointedness in everything. There's disjunction in everything. Interruptedness in everything. But it is not so there. Everything is on the absolute plane there.
Where are we? His divine form is the entity of absolute concentrated intensity of being, cognizance, and ecstasy. And so the attributeless, formless spirit, or Brahman, the unconcentrated principle of being, cognizance, and bliss, that's where the lax
Yeah,
is.
here this is right here, yeah.
The lax presentiment of or something. Let's see here. Is merely the bodily effulgence of that entity of absolute concentrated intensity. I just love how mind melting like the words are.
Yes, yes, it's wonderful.
The divine intrinsic form of Krishna is in itself without origin, and it is the origin of Brahman and Paramatman. That self-same Krishna, who is served by Shri, the original goddess of fortune, is Govinda, who may be viewed according to his pastimes as Gopati, the lord of the cows, Gopapati, the lord of the cow herds, Gopipati, the lord of the cowherd damsels, Gokulapati, the lord of the divine village on earth where cows flourish, and Golokapati, the lord of the divine abode of cows. As both the predominator and the predominated, he is the cause of all causes. Incited by the glance of his fractional, predominative descent, Purusha Avatara, form of Paramatman, his predominated inferior potency creates the material world. The unlimited individual souls, or jivas, are the manifest marginal potency rays of effulgence emanating from that Paramatman. This holy book establishes the supremacy of Lord Krishna, and thus the auspicious invocation to the book is accomplished by chanting his name.
Nibol, Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare
Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Aye, wonderful, wonderful. Will we finish the first verse? We just come to the end of our time. Does anyone want to add any further thoughts what we've heard or discussed, what we've read. It like it just all to me it comes across as both sweet and scientific, at the same time. Dignity, science, sweetness, everything is there and clear. Our gurus are very clear and systematic in how they are presenting this. They're laying out this map for us, out of their mercy, right? They're showing us what is the ontology. It's wonderful. Well, I'm so happy that we're on this journey together, and there's much more ahead. Okay, well, should we end there then, Subhasini? Didi, anything you want to add?
Sorry. No, Didi, I don't have anything to add. No, nothing. Very nice.
Matsu, you want to add something? Divi, sorry, Didi.
Just express my appreciation and gratitude, and it's a very wonderful privilege. I remember once in a darshan in Calcutta, and we were departing, my family and some other Western devotees, we were departing back to London, and we asked, Srila Gurudev said, do you know what is Krishna consciousness? And crickets, nobody knew the answer to that. It was very awkward. And he didn't say anything. But then when we got to, we left for the airport, and then we had a transit flight, and we landed in Dubai, something like that. And the sun was rising, and it was a very luxurious, beautiful atmosphere there in the airport. And the first thing we saw when we got off the flight was this giant billboard with lotus flowers and beautiful gold lettering that said, "It's a privilege." And we all, and Vishaka was there, and my other daughters, and we looked at each other like that was the answer. It's a privilege. And I think that's something that we need to really in the forefront, that it really is a privilege. It's a privilege. And that contrast, living in the world, working, paying bills and jobs and all that, we seem to appreciate it more because of the contrast. If you spend a couple hours on Twitter and oh my God, and then have your morning practice, hearing, chanting, everything, and then the contrast is very useful. That's something that Guru Maharaj said to me, is like make a contrast. Don't be afraid of contrast. So that's all I wanted to say. That I think that idea that it's a privilege not to take things for granted, because it happens so easily.
Okay. That was beautiful, beautiful. Thank you for sharing, Didi.
It's wonderful to see Chintami making herself at home here. I feel home girl. Our homie.
Keeping it real.
Do you think? Keeping it real. We're at home. It's just, I made a pot of kitchen and it was lovely, but the photograph wasn't very nice. So I'm sending everyone this lovely, it doesn't have dal, but it has rice and lots of lovely vegetables. And I know there's many good cooks here, so please be merciful. Accept it. At the end of our meeting, we should always have some prasad to distribute, some food stuff. So Gurudev blessed me with that capacity. So please enjoy the virtual kitchery that you can't see. It's here. Dandavat pranams.
Thank you so much.
It made me very happy. I'm very happy to be here for the first time, and hopefully I can come again.
Jai, please.
Very sweet. Dandavat pranams to everyone. Hari, Jayadev, and Suvasini, and Julal Krishna, our new family member. All the best to everyone. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you. Dandavad.
Dandavat Pranam.
Jai Divya Shari Didi, Ki Jai.
Jai.
Yeah.
I'm a little bit of a Vishaka fanatic, Divya Shari. I'm like I've established her as my person, so I know she likes camera on, and even if I have to like get ready for work and do things, as long as I can hear and my internet doesn't go like my camera will be on. Like even if it's not comfortable, like here I am getting ready.
Hair and makeup. I'm in my yoga clothes until I do hair and makeup. You don't want. It's better without it. Isha told me once her phone doesn't recognize her until she does her hair and makeup. Her phone's like, who's that? These aren't your concerns, Vishaka. Okay, sorry. I love that you're here. It's great. It's home girl.
Jai Shri Bhakti Sundar Govinda Deva Goswami. Jai Shri Bhakti.
Have a great day, everyone. Have a great day.
Jai.
Jai Shri Brahma-samhita ki Jai.
Jai. Jai.
Jai. Shri Hari Nam Singh.
Jai.
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 Anjali.